Hello, and welcome to our Last of Us HBO Spoilercast, where each week we're reacting to the latest episode and talking in depth about what we've watched. I'm Phil, or AK Black and Red, and on this channel I talk about The Last of Us a lot, along with other survival and horror themed video games, so if that's your thing, then be sure to subscribe. This week I'm joined by Abby, aka Opalink Cosplay, who's a producer for Spores Productions, who made The Last of Us Part 2 fan film All We Lost, in which she played Ellie, as well as a prolific cosplayer, including being the official Atreus cosplayer for God of War Ragnarok, and a cosplay championship judge at this year's Insomnia Game Fest, I believe.
Yeah, I'm really excited. It's my first time going to Insomnia, so I'm excited.
And Will, who runs Resident Evil Central, the place to go to keep up with survival horror game news and the largest Resident Evil fan accounts on Twitter, as well as my co-producer for the Horror Game of the Year Awards.
Hello.
As the name implies, spoilers lie ahead for the 7th episode of the HBO series, so if you haven't watched it yet, then make sure you do before proceeding. You don't have to have played the game to follow along, although do be aware that we will mention where things echo or diverge from the game up to this point. So with all that out of the way, let's dive into the thing that we're all here for. So as kind of a recap, the episode 6, we saw Joel and Ellie reach the University of Eastern Colorado and discover that the Fireflies were in Salt Lake City, only for a raider attack to leave Joel on the brink of death with a broken baseball bat through his stomach. We pick up with Ellie and Joel in the basement of a house where she's trying to tend to his wounds while he's trying to send her away, and this leads Ellie to remember the events that led to her getting bitten, which are adapted from the game's DLC, which was also called Left Behind. So we can dive into the details shortly, but first of all, let's take our overall reviews of the whole episode and what we thought about it. So, Abby, do you want to do the honors and go first?
Yeah, I was really interested to see how closely they followed Left Behind, especially considering obviously not every Last of Us fan that would have played the games, I feel like would have played the DLC, because that's just how things are. Some people just don't get around to DLC. But I absolutely loved Left Behind, and like just seeing more of Ellie as a person outside of Joel. And I absolutely loved it. So far, episode 6 has been my favorite, but this is very close. And Storm Reed as Riley, especially, and Bella's performance as Ellie in this, they are so good. Like, they really came out of their shell in this, and it's just it was amazing.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with, I think, pretty much all of that. What about yourself, Will?
It was definitely very much an emotional roller coaster, and yet again we've got put through the ringer at the very end. Yeah, no, I absolutely love the episode. It's definitely up there with one of my favourites of the season so far.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I probably struggle to pick a favourite until I've seen them all. I think I wouldn't even know off the top of my head which one is my favourite, but I think for this one, kind of picks up on one of the things that I saw at the end of episode 6 was where Bella Ramsey's performance, when she's like in that moment of distress and like sort of extreme emotion, absolutely shines through, and like obviously kind of all the tears and everything at the end, but also and we see a different performance from Ashley Johnson in the game, obviously with the DLC, the way she plays it, which is also good in its own way. But I think like some of the stuff, particularly when like you see the moments after they kiss and she says sorry, and then Riley says what for, and she just beams, like her face just like glows, and it's one of those things. And like with a lot of the other stuff that you kind of see before, where the way she's looking at Riley and stuff, it feels like, I think, probably the most natural part of any of that. Like, just it feels like, yeah, that's absolutely genuine human emotion there. That's like just all shining through, and I think that's kind of the strength of everything that she's done. Is like this episode and last episode have easily been her strongest performances out of the whole show, I think, so far. So yeah, that's and yeah, in regards to the DLC, I think they managed to get pretty much everything that they could get in reference wise that wouldn't have made it sort of weird, like, because it was a video game thing, and like it all kind of fits. Obviously, we were never going to see Bella Ramsey's Ellie, like fighting off like 20 hunters or whatever in a shopping mall, because different way that they're portraying it and everything, and the way they're portraying the violence. But a lot of that's it's just. I think one of the things I'm liking about this, especially considering like that it is essentially, you know, a zombie show, and what we've seen is that they don't bother like trying to go remind us that those things exist all the time. Like we have the infected when we need them for the basis of the story. There's not just like this constant thing of, oh, we haven't seen an infected for half an hour, let's best throw something in. It's like, now we don't need to. We know they're there. Let's focus on the story. Let's focus on the people. And I think that's like, again, it's showing all the strengths of the way they've written it and the way that, like, as an adaptation as well, I think. So that's kind of my general verdict. But I mean, just looking in terms of if we're gonna dive in and talk in more depth about it, there's so like it all feels like quite self-contained. It's quite a short story, like we were 50 minutes long, but so many little details like kind of happen and picked out. But I suppose we'll start at the start because that makes sense. So we get to see something we didn't get to see really in the game. We saw a little bit of it in the comics, if anyone's read the American Dreams comics. But Ellie being a Fedra school and kind of this little like drill session, and then the fight that she has with the girl Bethany, and then the meeting afterwards with Captain Kwong, who's sort of trying to groom her towards being an officer, pull her in line. And this is obviously something we've not really seen at all before in terms of details in this. So what was your take on any of this before we get into even the meat of the story, like this kind of starting point?
I think it was the point that she seemed quite happy to come to that life of becoming an officer and settling into that kind of life of that this is going to be it. I'm just going to be someone who tells people what to do and be in control. Yeah,
because the guy could, like, Captain Kwong, his name was, I thought I got it in my notes there. I wouldn't have remembered that, but yeah, he's kind of saying like he sees a leader in her and like someone who can be in charge. Like if she can only get over being the way she is and everything else, which I think we do see a lot of in a character, particularly later on in the games, and like we go into part 2 and stuff like that. There's a lot more of that there, but obviously that's also balanced with that kind of impulsive side and that almost kind of leap to violence, like in situations like that one cut between like the like where she's facing off with Bethany, next thing there's a black eye. Just like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Also, for the Easter egg fans, the key ring that you used to demonstrate the kind of the 2 paths did have the little Naughty Dog logo on.
Yeah. My obviously, because we're UK based, we kind of don't get to unless you like to stay awake until 2 a.m. We don't really get to watch it till Monday. So my partner and I make every Monday we get together and watch it so we can watch it ASAP. And he's like a massive Last of Us, a Naughty Dog fan as well. But every time there's an Easter egg, like the Naughty Dog logo, I was like, look at the keyring.
Yeah. Well, one that I didn't notice that comes up almost immediately after, or I noticed it in the show, but then I didn't notice that they kind of like retconned it into the game as well. Like she's got a Mortal Kombat poster on her wall because they obviously use Mortal Kombat rather than the fictional game in the show. But I never even noticed that they snuck a Mortal Kombat 2 poster into Left Behind on the remake. So like, although they play the kind of fictionalized Mortal Kombat with angel knives and all that sort of stuff, they've still snuck that in, so it does exist somewhere. Whether that suggests that they kind of were making this, like when they were making this, they knew that it was coming and all this sort of stuff, I don't know, and just like, well, we'll put this in, so it kind of feeds back to it.
Nice.
Beyond the Easter, I mean, the other Easter, in terms of Easter eggs in Ellie's room, we see she's got obviously dinosaurs and space and all their big things. In there, and then Riley sneaks in and comes in and like puts a hand over her mouth and like gets thrown to the floor, and like everything and kind of happening from there. And this is where we're we're in familiar territory now as far as this goes. So how did you feel that this was delivered, this kind of first meeting, compared to what we saw in the game, and even in its own right, I suppose? But thoughts?
I do like how it shows that Riley knows sort of how to deal with Ellie. Like Riley knew that Ellie would make a sound and like make a commotion about it. So I felt like it was a really kind of good way to introduce the fact that they had that friendship. And, you know, the bit before Ellie looks at the empty bed across the room and people that aren't familiar with the games will be like, oh, who's this? Yeah, I just can't express how much. And like their first interaction, I just can't express how much I love Storm as Riley. It's just such a nice dynamic. It's like having someone that can challenge Ellie.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen Storm reading anything before. She's in Euphoria, I believe, which is something I've never watched.
No.
So I don't know whether. No, we're all just like, no, we don't know these kids, what the kids are watching these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, she's like the whole dynamic, like the way that they kind of play off each other in pretty much all of this is just. But it's like it's all the like little subtle glances and looks and moments, like all the way through, that kind of feed into that. And I mean, one of them comes a little bit late. I mean, after they leave the room, there's a couple of other bits which we might go back to. But you notice when like she asks about her joining the Fireflies, and she says, "Oh, how did you get into there? Did you start dating some Firefly dude?" And then he said this, and it's got. And I like it was like it's like a prompt, like kind of like with Frank, like who's the girl this is for, that sort of thing, like
testing the waters.
Oh yeah, who?
Yeah.
Is there someone there? Like your boyfriend?
There's also in that scene there's a tape on a table that's Aha, and it's that's the band that she sings. The song to Dina, isn't it? Is it Take On Me?
Yeah.
That she sings in part 2, yeah. I thought that was a nice touch as well.
Yeah, that it plays in the point at which the lights come on and they're like standing over them all and everything like that. So they're obviously trying to tie those things, whether we'll see it kind of used in the future as a callback to this and then anything else, I don't know. Like sort of Ellie's song. But I mean, they've managed to like tie in some absolute bangers to some of the most like heart-wrenching moments of the show so far. 80s means trouble.
Yeah.
So just before we got to that point, I mean, we have got like after they go out the room, they find the dead body with the booze on, and obviously they take the thing, and then it took me by surprise, like when the body just kind of fell through the floor.
I love that, and I love their reaction to it because it's like just such a childlike reaction, just them just giggling at each other. Like it's just a really nice little pure, like even though it's a really weird situation, it's a really nice little pure moment of like, you know, these are just two kids.
Yeah, just sneaking out, having fun, being rebellious, stealing booze off a corpse, all things that, you know.
Corpse booze.
I can't say I've ever had that particular experience as a teenager, but that's just me.
And would you drink something that was next to a dead body as well? Like, did that kill him? You never know. You're like,
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like whiskey, and I wouldn't drink that anyway. So.
No, I mean that would sell it for me if it was whiskey. Like, I'd be double checking, like, say, you know, did he die because of the pills and he wasn't already infected or anything like that? Like, so if I drink this, I'm gonna get that. But then if I got over that, they were like, well, free whiskey, no, just to say no.
I thought we might have got a Molotov scene, but
yeah, no, that the main characters of the game, the Molotov cocktail and the brick, and they have not made an appearance as of yet.
Yeah.
So, like, in all this stuff I mean, it keeps coming back, and it comes back towards like the conflict they have at the end, where Ellie like almost walks out before she comes back. But we kind of see it up to this point, and like when she's talking about how Riley joined the Fireflies, and there's this conflict between them. Not conflict, I suppose banter at this point about like the Fireflies and Fedra, and the kind of talking politics essentially about the world and everything like that. And it's interesting, I think, to see kind of the way that like do it, because I don't get the sense that Ellie's like a true believer as far as Fedra goes, like, or ever was. But she's obviously not a true believer in the Fireflies either, so she knows what to say to kind of push Riley's buttons, and Riley's trying to like be like, I'm not gonna rise to the bait, which is definitely I think a talent when someone starts saying things that they know will get a rise out of you. You're just like, well, actually, you're wrong about this because
Yeah, Ellie's obviously incredibly smart, and I feel like everything, like most things she has, like has a reasoning behind it. And I think she's not political. Like you said, I don't think she necessarily believes like Fedra are better than the Fireflies per se. I think it's just whoever is looking after me, feeding me, and keeping me alive. I'm with them.
Yeah, and she can recognize the like utility of violence to doing that. I mean, that comes back to obviously how she looks at Joel as well, because when she sees that moment where he's able to take care of her because he's able to beat that guard to death, and there's that like kind of recognition in her eyes. Whereas like Fedra are obviously highly armed and trained, and they've got this whole sort of ecosystem, so they're safe there. Which is where obviously she wants Riley to come back into that safety. So it's that sort of thing which the Fireflies, I suppose, have never offered her up to this point. Have never been involved in any way. They're just sort of something outside, which is a threat. Which, because this is different as well, like the way that they have the fight, like just kind of picking like this part, the part where she discovers the pipe bombs, like that Riley's not just there because she's saying goodbye because she's going away, but she's also there to look after these bombs that are essentially going to be used on some sort of attack on the city at some point. And that sort of, so how did you take, like, what did you guys feel about that scene, and like the way that they've kind of put those two things together in terms of the personal conflict because of like the moving apart with the, I suppose, political conflict of the two different opposing organizations, which then they obviously end up abandoning both as well. We can make our own way and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's because that was different, wasn't it, from the game? Because originally Marlene wasn't Marlene. Oh my god, I've completely blanked. I was just thinking about Marlene and the Firefly. Riley. I don't think Riley originally was like posted there, was she? And it wasn't mentioned that she was going away. It's been a while since I've played Left Behind.
So she mentioned towards the end that she's going away, which is like around when they have the water gun fight in the game.
Right. Okay.
And that's where she's like saying, like, you're the one person who could tell me to stay.
Right. Okay. Like I said, it's been a while since I've played Left Behind, but for some reason I couldn't remember that. But it definitely added.
Oh my god,
again,
fake fan.
I know, fake fan. It definitely added again that other layer, I think, where Ellie, even though Ellie has, like Riley and eventually Joel and then Dina, people seem to have a reason to leave her or to almost like use her a little bit, because Ellie has that realization of like, oh, you didn't just scope this place out for me, you're here for a reason, it's not just for me. I think that kind of cements that thing with Ellie of she kind of has to look out for herself over anything. But I do find it interesting that how they're playing the Firefly versus Fedra thing, especially obviously in episode 2, where it's not Fedra that are coming after like Tess and Joel and Ellie, it's the infected. So Fedra feel like less of a threat and just more of like a faction, like less of a threat than they were in the games, I feel.
Yeah, they've kind of left them behind at that point. Once they got past the city and past that one guard, they're kind of out and they're left back there in the quarantine zones because we don't really. It doesn't look like we'll see them again, pretty much at all.
No.
No, excuse me. So yeah, so it's interesting because, like I say, I think it's the kind of the way. I mean, you could probably go into like incredible depth in analyzing it because the way they seem to keep trying to like weave so many themes together, which come back obviously to like again the heart of it is Ellie and kind of how she's feeling and whether she's being like got this family in protection and all of the like the real world, that conflict in the world building that's like built around it is all kind of thematically fits in with what's going on in her personal life essentially, and it's all comes back to that, and it's the way that's done. But just trying to think where we are now. So
Arriving at the mall, I think.
yeah. So before that, Marlene is a factor I wanted to mention because you were saying you're thinking about, because we've not like she in the show, Ellie meets Marlene in episode 1 after she's been bitten and after she's been found, and so there's not the same connection that they had there, like because she's got the knife that in the game canon she got from Marlene, which is from her mother with the letter. In this, it's something entirely disconnected. So again, this is something which we might want to talk about this once episode 9's there, depending on what happens in it. But it does seem like they're putting a lot more distance between Ellie and the Fireflies than exists in the game, particularly for say like what's going to happen in episode 9 and around Joel's choices in that episode.
Yeah, to try and make us sympathize with Joel more maybe, and see his point more so, because we don't quite have that connection with the Fireflies.
Yeah, because I think I mentioned it last week. I think it would have been quite a lot more backlash. I think if it had been obviously this whole the Firefly story had been more fleshed out, and then obviously we know what happens at the end, and I think they would not very much sympathise with Joel with this decision.
Yeah, it's definitely like kind of a fine line, like more like fleshing out more characters. You got to do it in a way that kind of still makes everyone's kind of well rounded, but you still got the sympathetic ones and the not so sympathetic characters. Like I think we mentioned as a prime example of this, like people like Kathleen. You completely understand where she's coming from, but there's no part of you that goes, maybe she had a point, because that's not the case at all.
Yeah, I feel like they're definitely playing into making us see Joel as a better person, like the whole bit with Tommy and him having like a proper breakdown about it and admitting that he's really struggling mentally. It's a completely different side, I feel like, to Joel that we just didn't really see as much in the games.
I mean, I suppose it's easier to sympathize with someone who like goes around and snaps the neck of every human that they interact with if you're the one doing the neck snapping.
Yeah, very true.
Not so much if they're kind of just watching them commit mass murder on telly.
Yeah.
But once we go into the mall, there's a whole kind of array of scene. Like Riley takes her on this whistle stop tour through all the wonders of like the pre-outbreak world and everything that we see. So, I mean, I could list them all in order if we want, but I think it probably might be easier just to kind of go through, kind of pick out the bits that stuck out to you, the things that you like enjoyed most or that made the most impact on you.
I love the escalator scene and just Ellie not knowing what they are, just like in the bit where that she's in the car with Joel and Joel's like, put your seatbelt on, and she's like, what's the seatbelt? It's just the little things that you wouldn't think about, that they just wouldn't know what it is. I loved that. It was cute.
Yeah, I thought the same with the pun book when she was going through it and they were talking about that joke and it said screenshot and they were like, I don't know what that means, and it's like it's so weird to see these obviously like children that don't know any of this sort of thing, and it's like how far the world's so different.
Yeah.
And
There's-
it's
there's-
sorry.
I was just gonna say there's I can't even remember what TV show it was from, but there's like someone talking to a similar character who's like not got any connection with like modern society or anything, and he just kind of like says to him, which I think is like kind of how we feel about Ellie at this point. He just goes, "I love you. You're like a Martian."
Legit, it's so cool. Well, it's again, I keep referencing the game because I really like to compare it, but there's a scene in the games just where like John and Ellie are walking around. Obviously, Ellie sees an old billboard of like a model, and the model's really thin. And Ellie's like, they had access to all this food. Why didn't they eat? Why isn't she bigger? And that's what I really liked when they were going around the mall, and Riley was like, Ellie was like, "Oh, why are some shops empty and some aren't?" And Riley was like, "Oh, well, when hell broke loose, they came and stole all the important things like shoes." And it just shows that money, and it's mentioned later on again when like there's a load of dollar bills and Ellie is like, I don't need this useless stuff. Just that complete disconnect from like material stuff like that. It's cool to see.
Yeah, it's because you don't really think about it too much like until you like it's presented to you and like actually this stuff doesn't mean anything. Like if you're like the main currency of the quarantine zones is ration cards. The main like Jackson basically is operated on the basis of communism, as they've said quite explicitly. And then the hunters and everyone else just kind of take what they want by force. So no one's using money of any or anything kind of like that. And there's a scene, not a scene. There's a part in part 2 where you go into an old bank and you can go into the safe, and if you find basically stacks of money there, and it's like if we lived in the old world, we'd be like made of like what would you do with all that money? But it's just left there to rot and gather dust.
Yeah, I think it was the whole moment as well when they turn the electricity on in the arcade, and it's just like that shouldn't really be happening in this kind of time and environment. You'd never think that would happen again, would you? So that the whole awe thing of that was an amazing thing as well to see.
Yeah.
And just I think for the podcast's benefits, does the cat have an opinion?
What do you think, Sanka? No, deadpan. Giving me nothing.
Okay. I'm unamused by your TV shows, human. So what else? I mean, on the you mentioned the model scene. We also had the kind of I suppose similar but with different connotations. The Victoria's Secrets scene at the store, and like there was that kind of moment where like I think when Riley said it, there was no recognition from her that what she said, but she says, "I'm trying to imagine you in one of those," and like I think she's kind of like because it's weird, but Ellie sort of has this moment of like, and then she checks her hair afterwards, like,
Yeah. Oh, it's so cute. Just the way they keep like testing the waters with each other and sometimes not even like realizing it, and it's like, oh, you too.
Yeah.
No, it was incredibly well acted because at no moment did it feel awkward. It just felt really natural.
Yeah.
In the awkwardness of what was happening. But yeah, no, it was a fantastic episode.
Yeah, because I mean, pretty much immediately after the Victoria's Secret, we have the carousel, and it's the same sort of thing in there. Was it there or later? There was a part where they'd finished something, and they got really like it was quite a while. It was before they'd even had the fight, let alone the actual kiss. But like they got really really close, and you could just feel that sort of moment. You could feel like everything, like that Ellie was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, Ellie's like really intently looking at her, and I think there's like quite a meaningful shot where you always see like Ellie's hand reach out to Riley, but that doesn't materialize
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah, because I mean, like, obviously, I've never been a teenage girl, but I have been someone who's like had an awkward crush on some other people, and like been like in that situation where like, oh, do I, don't I? And it feels you could feel like the awkwardness of it inside. You're just like, yep, I've been there. We've also, we also had the photo booth. Obviously, I think it might have been the photo booth where that was the point I was talking about, where they were like they kind of leaned really close or at the end or something.
Yeah, I think they did. Yeah.
Although the one thing we missed, which I think was probably the best joke that's ever been in The Last of Us, because the outbreak happened here in 2003 and Facebook wasn't formed until 2004. So we never got the joke where it pops up on the screen, says share to Facebook, and Ellie goes, "What's a Facebook?"
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then they're playing Mortal Kombat. So they go to the photo booth and play Mortal Kombat 2 after that, and again, both of those scenes I think hit very differently from when you're playing the game, because obviously with the game they're kind of designed around the interactivity of it. It's like you get to choose what poses they do for the pictures, and then you can share it on like the Facebook joke thing was like, because you could share it in the original game on Facebook, or nowadays you share it on like Twitter. But it's like kind of you've personalized like their interactions, and then the Mortal Kombat 2 wasn't the same. It was Ellie imagining it, and so you're kind of just seeing her face and pressing the buttons and doing that. So I think it still works. Obviously, it's kind of heartfelt, but there is definitely a difference in playing the moments in the DLC. If you can remember from it, like how that feels in terms of the way they're building those storytelling, like in that. I don't know if either of you have played that quite recently or can remember.
I've got to say, played it quite recently, but it's because how long is the DLC? Was it like
like 5, 6, maybe 6, 7 hours
Yeah.
at most. At most, I'd say maybe 5 hours, if I remember. Again, it's been a couple of
Yeah.
years since I played it.
No, yeah, because they had a lot more breathing space, I think. Obviously, because you've got to cram it all into a 50-minute episode, you've got to include a lot and make it flow quickly. But,
Yeah. And you've got a lot more where it's like kind of you can rush through it, or you can take your time and go to this, and then go to this, and go to this. Whereas that sort of player agency, you can't really deliver on television. So they've got to kind of curate it for you. But still, like I say, it still worked. It delivered a different kind of experience, but I think it still felt like it worked there as well. But then in the midst of this, obviously, as they're playing Mortal Kombat, we rush over to another shop, which anyone, again, from the game, we don't get this same scene, but what we do get, it's very similar, is in the modern day Ellie, when she's looking for the because you get more gameplay looking for the sewing, the sutures and everything, and then you have to fight hunters. But there's one scene where you have to get a key off a pharmacist who's locked in a shop, which is where this infected is, and it's basically shot for like the exact same kind of setup, and he's kind of trapped in the spores. Not the spores, the
Tendrils?
Tendrils. And kind of like growing into the wall and stuff.
It's gross. It's so gross. Yeah, it felt very Stranger Things, that shot where like it zoomed away and slowly went to like the creature. And I really love how the infected are done in it, and just how they feel more like creatures, because that's kind of what they are, they're just that they feel less human than in the game, I would say. So, and yeah, as soon as I saw that though, and obviously where we've seen in previous episodes, where as soon as one sort of infected awakens or whatever, you see a bunch more. At that point, I was like, oh, there's going to be a whole horde of them. Yeah. That's what I was assuming.
Yeah, definitely. And I thought it was quite good that because from what I remember, they introduced the enemy, and then obviously we didn't see it for quite some time in the episode. So I always thought, when's it going to pop out? Is it going to be now?
Yeah.
I thought that was quite good as well.
Yeah, because I mean, presumably, like the noises everywhere, like there's so many more like spaces for it to pick, and then by the time they finds them, like they've moved on from the arcades to the Halloween store, and they're in there because Ellie hears that after they have the fight and she walks off, Ellie hears that scream, doesn't she? Which then turns out to be like one of those little contraptions, like sort of
Yeah.
I was watching the episode and I was like, they're making so much noise. They're making so like the whole thing. I just kept inwardly thinking like, oh my god, they're so loud. It's gonna pop up any moment.
Yeah, because as soon as that arcade turned on, I was like, oh god, here we go.
Yeah.
Before we talk about kind of how it all wrapped up and how it ended for them, any more bits of the actual kind of build up to the day, like any more of the mall? Have we missed anything, or any other bits, that kind of moments that pop out? Do we think?
Yeah, I can't think of anything more.
I love how the Halloween masks were like exact replicas of the game. Because obviously there was the bit where Ellie stormed out and I was like, oh, they're not going to do the Halloween scene. I thought that was going to be it. I thought Ellie was going to storm out and then like come back after changing her mind and find Riley in trouble. So I loved her coming back and that whole bit.
Yeah, and then dancing in the masks, and obviously the kind of the don't go and the kiss and everything. Which again, like I think they've just the way they capture that. I mean, it feels like kind of repeating the same point over, but yeah, that feeling of like that kind of awkwardness between them, and then like the affection and everything else. It all just felt so genuine, and it was that, I think for me it was that particular moment when, again, she said sorry, and then Riley goes, what for? And she just it's just like this smile cracks over her face, just like just felt like, so it was like, oh,
yeah, it was really genuine.
It's because it's what I've liked about the same as last episode as well. It's given us that the story of innocence and the story of happiness in amongst all this horrendousness that surrounds them. There's still moments that it's like pure joy.
Yeah, which of course is not to last, because we can't have an Last of Us episode
it's The Last of Us
without having our hearts ripped out and stomped on. So yeah, that obviously then leads to them to the scene where they both get bit, and then the kind of aftermath. And I mean, obviously, chip in with anything you want to say on this bit, but I think for me, again, there was one quite subtle change there, which I think worked really well. Was that like they're both like, Ellie gets angry, smashes the thing up, and then they sit down and kind of have that conversation about what their options are, and like be all poetic and lose our minds. And then in the game, Riley says, "Come on, let's get out of here," and like stands up and walks. And the final shot is Ellie and kind of putting a hand over her face. Whereas with this part, you get they just kind of sit there and embrace and just hold each other, like that last moment, like, which it's the slightest change. It doesn't change anything huge, but it just, I don't know, that just hit really, really hard.
Considering how much Ellie's a fighter, just to see her resigned really, but you could tell obviously with her smashing, she wanted to be angry, but Riley made her feel that, like, just that they were willing to go in peace together even if they didn't.
Yeah.
There was also that moment where Riley obviously found out that she was bitten. She was just like showing it with a hand and just like, there you go, that's it. Whereas obviously Ellie was like, when she saw the bite, she was like trying to scratch it away, and that's sort of like bewildering, like, oh god, because I see it with the kids at school all the time. It's like, no, don't be there, don't be there. And it's like, it's
Did you get many kids bitten by infected Cordyceps?
Believe me, there's at least a bite a day.
I think that was one of the most standout performances so far for me, the bit where Ellie sees the bite and that scream. that Bella lets out. Oh my gosh. That I cried a lot during this episode, but I audibly sobbed like out loud during 2 bits. And it was that bit where Ellie like just, and it's only quick. She doesn't dwell on it.
No.
But just that one moment of, and just the way that Bella acts it, I was just completely enamored. I was like, this is insane. Then obviously the bit, I think it's during that section where it cuts back to modern day with Joel and Ellie, and Joel squeezes Ellie's hand. Oh my god, I just started sobbing. I was I was such a mess. I was such a mess. Just that whole last like 5-10 minutes. Oh god. Crazy.
Yeah. Well, we haven't really talked about like the Ellie and Joel parts, because like Joel's a bit more animated this time, not just kind of just sitting there like on the verge of death as Ellie's doing everything.
Yeah, he's watching everything she does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I like that, the fact that kind of like that at the end, like holding the hand, like sort of accepting that she's going to be there, because obviously very early on he's like literally physically pushing her away and go find Tommy, just go. And then she's like, "Oh, Joel, just fucking shut up!" And
yeah,
yeah,
the way Joel keeps being like, "Leave me," and she's like, "No."
Because we got an awful lot in a very, very short space of time at the beginning and end of that episode, I think, in terms of how their relationship evolved and kind of how they see each other as well. Because like, he's definitely got that whole thing of like, it's my job to protect her. If I can't do that, then I'm worthless. I don't have any kind of purpose there. Whereas he's like, he's stuck with me. He's not gone away after everything that happened. So I have to fight to keep him alive, because it can't be another Riley. It can't be another Tess. It can't be another Sam situation.
Yeah. No, we've seen moments from them both now where they're pushing each other away and literally saying, just go, and they always keep coming back. And I think, as we said with that discussion earlier about with the Fireflies and which way, I think it's just showing that relationship's really cemented now, where they both depend on each other, and those moments, they've gone through the worst moments together, is they've got through it because of each other and not because of anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is really sort of now that weave to the final decision. I think it's really cemented now, and it's going to be we're into that final dash now.
Yeah. Well, we can talk future spoilers shortly, and any kind of theories and thoughts we have on the last 2 episodes coming up. But before we do, is there anything else you want to touch on from the episode as a whole? Anything we've not really mentioned that sticks out or is worth noting? Or any final thoughts on the episode overall?
My brain, I really thought, I don't know why, just with the subtle changes that the show has been making, for some reason, I really thought we were going to see Riley. I really thought we were going to see Riley turn. I really thought we'd see that, and I don't know why. I was so surprised when I was like, "Oh, we didn't see it," even though that's what happened in game. Like, we don't see it happen. So it felt like, as someone that's played the game, I was like, "Is that it? Is that what do you mean? That's it?" But again, I'm glad they didn't show that, because they didn't need to. We saw Henry turn a few episodes ago. Oh no, Sam, sorry.
Yeah.
My brain is still soup. Sorry.
we did talk about that last week, because we said, like, wondered whether we were going to see that, like, for an extra bit of heartbreak, especially because they, like Ellie mentioned, that it wasn't the first person she'd had to like kill, with reference to Riley. But I guess, like, even for Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin, that was too much heartbreak to give to us, to have to see her go through that moment that Henry went through when he had to shoot Sam.
Yeah. And it's storytelling in its own right, isn't it, that we don't see that, because it's in the end, we're sort of viewing these memories through their eyes. We're experiencing it with them, and it would make sense that Ellie wouldn't want to necessarily relive that part of it.
No, and she might not actually remember if she's that closed off psychologically. Yeah. She might have forgotten it completely.
Yeah, because then it becomes the question of, if she's still like how did the Firefly, and then that's a whole, potentially a whole extra episode, like, of what happens, and you don't necessarily need any of that. That's details. It might be kind of fun for us like Last of Us nerds, but not necessarily bring anything of benefit to the actual story as a whole.
I guess we'll talk about this in the next bit, but I was also quite surprised. I assumed we'd see Ashley, because this was quite a like throwback memory episode. I thought we'd see Ashley Johnson in this, in whatever her role is.
Yeah. I'm
intrigued to see where they fit that in.
Yeah, it does look like that will be in episode 9 now from everything that has been said, which we kind of touched on when we talked about it last week, but we can talk on more detail in a minute. So, but yeah, I think that covers everything about the general episode then, and we've kind of talked around a lot of our thoughts on it, and the general thoughts are lots of references, really good adaptation, so much heartbreak, much tears. Just before we dive into like that, just to mention some brief kind of Last of Us related news. The season 1 soundtrack is now available, which I think it released this week. So that's obviously not just the songs from Gustavo Santaolalla. That's also the kind of the tracks that they've used in there, which I believe also includes Nick Offerman's cover of "Long Long Time," and that's in there. So that's I think that's probably available on Spotify as well. But if there's people out there who still buy albums, I guess that's the thing that you can still get. And also, we mentioned last week when we were talking about episode 6 that there were a few not Easter eggs, a few kind of mistakes, like where there was camera crew visible in one of the shots, and also when you see Shimmer, the horse, there's like a hand visible just underneath the chin. HBO have apparently now fixed this, so they're no longer available on the episode. You can see like fixed versions of it. So
no.
If you missed it, you've missed it. Also, I think probably the most exciting part of this is in an interview recently, Pedro Pascal's hinted that season 2 may start filming this year. So I think what might come for season 2 is something I want to at some point talk about in a lot more depth with as many spoilers as possible. But that won't be this episode. We might try and arrange something special for that, because I think there's so much to talk about there. But yeah, if they potentially start filming this year, then that means that we might get season 2 sooner than we might have anticipated. So that would be cool. Something to look forward to.
Pedro's. I don't know how Pedro has time to breathe.
No.
Well, judging by like when I'm just scrolling through TikTok, he's like been on every single possible like show in the UK recently, because there's like clips of him on all the like BBC interview shows. Then there's like him on the radio, like doing all these things. Like there was one where he was on Radio X or something to play the game where they had to say, like, they played the sound backwards and he had to say the sound that was backwards, and then he replayed it forwards to see if it sounded like the original clip or something.
Nice.
And it was to say "May the Force be with you." Well, but that's by the by. That's absolutely no relevance to anything we're talking about.
It's Pedro.
Just Pedro Pascal is everywhere at all times.
He is omnipresent.
So yes, let's dive into talking about the future. So if we're going to talk about what we're looking forward to in episode 9, which is called "When We Are in Need," and episode 8 is "When We Are in Need," and episode 9, "Look for the Light," this section will contain spoilers for the game beyond the point we've seen in the TV show so far, and therefore potentially spoilers for future episodes of the show. So if you are going into The Last of Us show completely blind and you never played the game, check the timestamps in the description to skip past this section towards the end. So you've been warned. So yeah, I mean, we could start with episode 8. We're going in to see, we're going to meet David. We know from some of the screenshots and stuff we've seen that we're going to see that kind of initial meeting around where where Ellie hunts the is around the campfire after she's got the stag. We also know that they're gonna. We only see it very, very briefly, but we're inside the restaurant when it's on fire and Ellie's hiding. We're gonna see the fight. So what are we hoping for, or what do we think is likely to happen as far as this episode?
I'm so afraid. I'm so afraid of David. David freaks me out so much. He's so creepy. I think I'm really excited to see in the obviously they have the previews of the episodes they release. And seeing that Troy Baker has like quite a heavy speaking role, I'm excited to see that. But yeah, just seeing how they convey that friendship that Ellie develops with David, and that how they're gonna play out that whole plot point of, you know, what the real intentions are. Oh my gosh, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I it's gonna be interesting. I've not seen the actor who plays David. His face looked vaguely familiar in the first trailers, but when I looked him up, I've not actually seen anything he's in, so I don't know what he's like as an actor in terms of playing anything. So, I mean, he's got the sort of look in that moment and the demeanor, like that he can definitely play a David type, but I don't know exactly what that's going to entail. Like, because I think, yeah, that will be a lot of a surprise. But one thing it does look like as well, because the episode is called "When We Are in Need," and that's a reference to the banner that is in the restaurant. Like when you're doing the David fight, you can see it in the corner. It says "When we are in need, he will provide," and it looks like they're going to lean a bit more because we'll get to see more of the community. Because there's like at least one scene we saw, which was David having a meeting with his community, and then we hear other people saying about she's just another mouth to feed and all this sort of stuff. But it looks like they're going to there's going to be like a religious element to it as well, like, which I think was kind of hinted at anyway, but I think they're going to be we're going to probably see more of that as like this community of cannibals is going to be religious cannibals. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, with this being the set piece for the final episode, it's going to be and obviously we know what the storyline's about. It's going to be really hard watch, I think. Maybe even the hardest one to watch.
Yeah, that's the hardest part of the game for me to play, because I'm just so uncomfortable throughout it, and not just because of like the theming of it, but just the way they convey just how, again, like smart these characters are. Like David is very, very smart and very manipulative, and I think it's going to be quite uncomfortable for, you know, new and old viewers just to see Ellie in that situation, because so far she's been pretty, you know, even if she's been in a bit of a bad situation, she's been able to sort of like slip her way out quite easily. But knowing how this episode will end in terms of the restaurant and a certain father figure coming, you know, and finding her afterwards, just it's gonna be quite interesting to see how Bella portrays like Ellie reaching that breaking point of being like, I was gonna die. Like that was scary.
Yeah, that's see, I've said, like, I think I've said a couple of times, like, this is the episode I'm most looking forward to on the basis of kind of the way they've done all the boss fighty stuff, like the bloater and the things, is they've made it a horror sequence. They've made this sort of horrifying, like, you know, you could make a whole movie about this one thing, like the bloater or the clicker and stuff. You could make a whole, well, with the clicker, you can make a whole movie called The Quiet Place. But
yeah.
But yeah, like they've done it and like they played into it like as a horror sequence and made it very scary, intense. And now they're going to do it with David, hopefully, when they do that scene. And I think that's just going to be, it's going to be edge of the seat, heart in your throat, and like. But I'm a sicko. I like horror, so that's going to be I think the favorite. I mean, the best moments obviously be when she turns his face into shish kebab at the end. But
yeah.
But like
how
knowing
much detail it goes for.
I was just saying, like, knowing how Craig Mazin obviously wrote Chernobyl, and just how uncomfortable I was for that whole show, just with, you know, people being sent in to die basically, and people being just disposed of. And I just feel like we're going to get that. Just I feel like it's going to be just a really uncomfortable episode of we've seen a lot of like the good in the apocalypse in terms of like Bill and Frank, and then Ellie and Riley. So now I feel like we're going to see like the really bad side of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on regards to Troy Baker's role, so he is playing James, who's like David's right hand man, who in the game, obviously, we see him get like hatcheted in the face by Ellie as she escapes from David before the fight. So that's one possible, and is that we will see Ellie kill Joel in the episode. The other option, which I've seen a lot of people talking about, is that if they kind of change where he is, like when Joel is looking for Ellie, if he's one of the ones that gets captured when he interrogates them, the other side of it is we could see Joel torture Joel.
Either way, it's going to be good.
Yeah, so there's something oddly satisfying about all of that.
I'm gonna be a changed person when I see Pedro Pascal as Joel calling Ellie baby girl. Like that's just gonna break me.
So like next episode, we're just gonna all be sitting here like, I've seen
Dragon
things, man.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So that's episode 9, episode 8. I don't know why I keep saying 9. That's episode 8.
You're excited.
Yeah. I'm obviously just getting ahead of myself. So then episode 9 is obviously once they reach the Fireflies in Salt Lake City and everything that goes down there, which, again, talking about what we want to do. But there's one question I think that's going to be whether it's going to be after everything that happens in episode 8 at the end of the episode, whether they'll stick it in at the end as like a moment of light, or whether they'll start episode 9 with this moment of happiness before all the kind of violence that goes down and then the mistrust at the end. So which way they'll do it. But they've got to fit the giraffe scene in somewhere.
Yeah, because we've not seen it.
We've seen no clips of that as well, so that there's... And I think as well, I mean, I think from a story point of view, they could get away with not doing it or doing something else in its place. But I think if they do that, there will be uproar.
Yeah, I don't think they could get away with not putting it in. You know,
there was a drawing of a giraffe on a bedroom wall, wasn't there, that she drew?
And the plushie. There's the giraffe plushie as well. So
yeah, so I think they will do.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, I think timing wise, it's probably going to be at the start of episode 9. I think the time wise, but yeah, the more I think about that, the more it seems to make sense that they like just have episode 8 end with the kind of, you know, I'm here, let's just say the baby girl moment, and then like kind of like they go off towards thing, and then episode 9 they pick up in the summer when they reach Salt Lake City, and that's there. But then obviously we get into the heart of episode 9. So what do we think? What are we predicting or hoping for as far as how they'll deliver that?
Well, if it's anything like the rest of the episodes where everything's turned up to 11, it's going to be a really brutal. I don't even know how to. I don't even have to put it across, but yeah.
Well, knowing that season 2 is going to be going into production, and obviously knowing the game series, I do wonder if we're going to get some Abby content. If we're actually going to see the Firefly base and kind of what leads up to that whole event from the Firefly side of it, because I feel like they almost need to put something in there, like that hints towards it, just like they did with Dean, like a little bit of Dina. I feel like something, knowing Neil Druckmann as well, I feel like something's going to be in there that alludes to Abby.
Yeah, so we'll probably have a flashback episode with that, won't we? Where we see Abby's build up to that.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be quite good for them to have just like with Dina, like a tiny glimpse of her somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the only problem they've got is like unless they've cast the actual Abby for season 2, it'd have to be like a tiny glimpse or a hint or something like that, like passage. But I mean, my kind of theory on like the point at which when Joel's told that Ellie has to die for the vaccine and he's not being given a choice over it, he's being marched out, is that that's the point where after he's been kind of, like as you say, he's been humanized a lot more. He's got this sort of the panic attacks and unsureness about himself. This is where like the kind of the switch flips, and then it'll still be more realistic to fit within the violence of this world, where he's not going to, obviously be like the way, I think the way I've described it previously, talking to people, is like it'll be in the game. If in the game he's like Sylvester Stallone in Rambo 3, in this it'll be more like Sylvester Stallone in First Blood. It'll be like that more realistic thing where it's still an absolute force to be reckoned with, but it'll be something a lot more. It's still a human character who's been pushed to the absolute brink, rather than like this like comic book action man type guy. And if they do that, I think, and like then he's like forced to do these things, and he does like horrible things like to get through and kill people, then showing the other side and people react to going like, basically there's a madman on the base and this is happening. That's where we could get. That's how they could feed in the stuff, like show someone they could hint as Abby, or like that conversation with people like, oh my god, we need to get to the operating room now, because we're at least going to see Jerry. We know.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, he needs to take a dive.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting because a lot of the violence we've seen from Joel is obviously so far, apart from obviously the one guard, has been self-defense or defending Ellie or defending those around him, whereas like this violence is going to be completely his choice. And seeing how much he sort of lost it in that first episode where he beats the shit out of the guard, seeing him like lose it's going to be hard, I think, as a viewer.
Yeah.
Hence.
And I think that's why I keep like First Blood is the film that springs to mind in terms of that, because I think because it's so different than all the later sort of schlocky things. It's essentially a drama like thing in the way they do that. So I think that sort of tone kind of fits with what I'm expecting to see.
Yeah.
And like basically Joel becomes this threat that nobody realized because they never took him seriously.
No. Yeah, because we've not seen that, Joel. It's always been talked about, hasn't it, throughout the series, and we've never actually seen it. But we will.
And going back to what you said earlier, Abby, about the Ashley Johnson scene, I think that will be a memory of Marlene's when she's making the choice to sacrifice Ellie, because she made that promise to Anna, didn't she, that to keep her safe. So
yeah, I'm intrigued to see how they do the whole Anna thing, and if we get like a definitive answer of why Ellie is immune, which I think a lot of the assumption is that Anna got bit whilst giving like in labor with Ellie, gave birth to her, and that's why she's immune for some reason. But it would be cool to get a little bit more insight into that.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about like having an actual explanation for immunity, because I feel like it's really easy to go like too far in beyond the bounds of believability with that. I think, I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see what choice they make, but I'm kind of hoping that they leave that one question unanswered. Personally.
Yeah. No, I do agree.
Anything else we want from episode 9 other than violence and memories?
Do you guys think they're gonna end it on the whole like swear to me you're telling the truth? Do you think that's going to be the end of the series or not? Because part of me thinks it's not going to be. I feel like they wouldn't end it on the exact same note as the game, but I don't know. I'm really on the fence.
Yeah,
I think so. Obviously, there's a degree to which we know what happens after that now, because part 2 came out and everything else, but still this is for a new audience, and like the whole point of part 2 is like it hinges on that lie in that moment, and like their relationship breaks down, and obviously Joel's death was as a result of what he'd done, which he'd lied about and everything else. So I think they could there's probably multiple ways they could do it and it'd still work, but I also kind of hope they do that exact moment, because I think there's a whole audience that can have that would still have that impact if they just cut to black at that point.
I think we're going to get that scene, but I don't know if that's going to be the ending note. And I don't know why. I just get a feeling that they're going to want to change it up a bit, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I think we're definitely going to get the scene, but I'm like 60% feeling it's not going to be the ending note of the series.
It'll be interesting to see what they do if they don't.
Yeah, because I mean, it's hard to say what you'd do instead without having seen their script and what they filmed. So you couldn't say, "Oh, do X, Y, Z." So, like, I suppose there's stuff they could do that would probably have the same. It'd have to end with an impact, some level of like kind of something's changed between them, and it's not quite as clear cut anymore. There's an ambiguity there. There's a distrust that's just like the gem of it. But yeah, there's also a big part of me that thinks if they just do that and cut to black, end it exactly the same way as the game, then all the TV viewers who've never seen that can just be like, wow.
Oh.
Yeah. Or what if they did where Ellie asked a question and then before Joel can answer, they cut to black and then we don't know what he says?
Yeah.
For the new fans, that'd be a really big way to end it.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I think that would be cruel, Will.
Well, the show's made me cruel, so
yeah,
ripped my heart out too many times.
Either that, or they'll sort of just have a flash forward at some point to see someone like, I don't know, some way of hinting that something's like coming for Joe, like see the doctor's body and then someone picks up a gun, or I don't know, something like
yeah.
But that feels cheesy as well. I obviously it's good that I'm not writing this because
exactly, it's such a hard job. It seems just going with the game and how that ends, it would be quite an easy way to still have a fantastic ending. But if they want to slightly change it, it'd be very difficult to make it not cheesy.
Yeah. Well, we've still got 2 weeks to wait before we find that out. So we've got two more episodes to go. So any other things we want to mention before we wrap up, or are you kind of just like now, like, no, give me next week's?
I know. I just want to watch the next one.
Yeah. Why isn't it Monday night already?
I know.
All right, then. In that case, so that's everything for this week. So before we go, if there's anything you want to talk about in terms of where people can find you or anything that's coming up of interest from your side, just plug anything. Now's the time to do it. So, Will, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go.
Does the cat want to go first?
He's telling me to go. No. So coming up, we've got this weekend we'll be doing the game Flavor Food nominations for the drink, and then we've got Resident Evil 4 remakes release coming up, so there'll be a lot of content going towards that, and then we've got WASD as well coming up, the indie game developer sort of show on in London, and hopefully we'll be trying to meet up with some of the games creators and getting chats and stuff with them. So there's lots to look forward to.
It's going to be a busy end of the month this month as well, I think, because I'll be going to WASD for the 3 days as well, so hopefully be able to see all the awesome stuff that they got on and get to meet up with people. And obviously, if anyone is looking for you on the internet, they can find you.
Resident Evil Central.
Cool. And Abby, how about yourself? What's coming up in the future besides hopefully not more illness?
Yeah, no more plague. yeah, as mentioned, obviously I'm a producer for Sports Productions. We make cosplay content like fan films and music videos and photo shoots. We have a Patreon, but we also obviously have our public pages, and we are pretty much set on our plans for the year. And if you're a Naughty Dog fan, you might want to keep an eye out for some of our upcoming content that's coming out soon. We've got some really cool stuff planned. So you can sort of follow our socials, which are just Spores Productions on like Instagram and Twitter, and our TikTok as well. We post dumb stuff on there and it's fun. And then yeah, if anyone's going to be at Insomnia Gaming Fest in April, I think it's the weekend of like the 7th. Yeah, I'll be there guesting as a cosplay guest. So I'll have a table and we'll be wearing Atreus and Final Fantasy VII. I'll be in Tifa. So I'll be there if anyone's going to be there. So come and say hi.
Cool. Good stuff. So thank you again, both of you, for coming along. And make sure if you check out the links in the description, show them some support and some love if you can. If you've enjoyed the podcast, give it a like and consider subscribing to keep up to date with all my content, including future episodes of the podcast. 2 more to go. All the videos on Last of Us, Resident Evil, horror gaming, and my live streams and whole game permadeath runs on Last of Us Part 1 and 2. Check out the links in the description to join my Patreon for as little as £1 per month, or donate to my GoFundMe and get your name in the credits of my videos, like those at the end of this video, who I want to thank for supporting me and my content. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.